Commission on Cybersecurity for the 44th presidency made 25 recommendations for a national cybersecurity strategy. To my knowledge, those have not been implemented to this point, or at least from a legislative perspective. Do you have any thoughts on that, or where you would suggest that we go first?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did reference CNCI, and we do have the inability to pull the trigger. In my previous position, and again, I do not represent those opinions of the Office of Director of National Intelligence. I am a civilian. Make sure I'm perfectly clear on that. But in a previous position, I did have a lot of discussion on those. Unfortunately, it was a lot of discussion. And again, we're too busy about trying to measure twice, cut once, versus trying to just pull the trigger on the 80 to 85% solution. And a lot of those efforts towards, a lot of those efforts should be, I believe, my personal opinion, that they should be enforced from CNCI 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 all the way through, and we should take a better look at those. Again, bring in a group of subject matter experts, find out how we're going to get it done, potentially craft the legislation that makes it happen, and then fund that activity. Because while we've got a lot of other battles on our front, this is very important. It's not just important for us, but it's important for our children and our grandchildren, lest we don't have an infrastructure or an American way of life to share with them later.
Okay. Would either of you other gentlemen like to comment on any specifics of those 25 recommendations?
I don't remember all the recommendations, but fair to say, in a soundbite, long on nouns, short on verbs. I mean, we've talked a lot about the challenge. It is about implementation and execution, and I don't want to sound overly dramatic, but in 1862, President Lincoln came before Congress with further storm clouds on the horizon and claimed, as our time is anew, we must think anew and ultimately act anew. And we are there now. We know what some of the challenges are. There are great pieces of legislation. Mr. Lund, many others have put forward pieces of legislation. Now's the time to actually get into that, identify what really needs to be done, and pass legislation. This can't be done through the private sector. Firstly, government has to act, get its own house in order, first and foremost, lead by example. Then we've got to look to what is the right incentive and other approaches to get the private sector to raise that.
I understand. My question was, were there any specific points that you wanted to make regarding the recommendations in particular that you felt should have more of a priority or address?
Act.
Okay, got it.
And again, if I could, I'm sorry, but if I could, CNCI 8, which was the education, training, and awareness, which I did speak to, that to me is of the utmost importance, because if we're not communicating and we're not training and we're not making sure we have the right skill sets in place, all the technology in the world doesn't matter for anything.
Okay. My last question for the three of you gentlemen, are any of you working with any stakeholder groups within the Department of Homeland Security or any other federal agency?
No, ma'am.
So you do your work completely from the outside. So you're not being sought after to share your thoughts and your ideas of what should be considered?
Not at the moment, ma'am.
Okay. Sir?
I stand where I sit. I'm not formally involved, but of course we share our ideas with every entity, including Congress and the executive branch.
No, my question is there a specific stakeholder group that you participate in sharing your ideas and the information and knowledge that you have?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not since leaving the government as of February 27th of this year.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I yield back.